just a little clunky. 2 left feet from Elliot.
They're doing best
No,
in
they're
the
fantastic. We need more lemurs. We need more
We
lemurs.
need more Tony Armstrong. And hey, he's right here. Hello.
No one needs more of me. Can I see some of your moves? I've already shown mine in the 6. Can I see some of your moves, guys?
Yeah, sure, Tony.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Michael, see, I love to see that. I love to see that. Are you
I
getting
didn't fall for
Are
it.
you getting the Origin rivalry going a week early, Lisa?
Oh, we haven't even started with that.
Well,
Oh,
I'm looking
wait
forward
for that.
to that. I'm looking forward to that. Let's talk AFL though, because they held their mid-season rookie draft, and with the #1 pick, North Melbourne selected Jacob Edwards, rewarding him for his great start to the season. The 202-centimetre tall has long been tipped as the best youngster in the mid-season draft crop, with the Kangaroos officially welcoming him to Arden Street last night. Just one former AFL player found a home with Matthew Parker, the former Saint, earning a second chance at the Richmond Tigers. All clubs bar Fremantle, the Western Bulldogs and Geelong made a selection in the draft last night, and I'm really looking forward to having a chat with Jacob a little bit later on. And I think Paul Kennedy has claimed that he's had a lot to do with his rise to the #1 pick.
Yes, pretty good claim too. Behind every good footballer is a great coach. Yeah, Mr. Paul Kennedy is a man of many talents, as are you, Mr. Armstrong. Thank you so much.
No worries.
I reckon they could do a pretty good dancing lemur too. What do you reckon?
Look, I can. If Tony did it in the 6 o'clock hour, you've done it in the 7, I'll save it for the 8. So
it's called a tease.
It is. It certainly is. So make sure you keep watching. Also, if you're in the east, hey, get your umbrellas ready because we've got lots of wet weather going on today. Brisbane showers, it's tending to rain, getting to 22. Sydney's got a top of 18 with rain developing there as well. It could be 15 millimetres, maybe even more. Canberra, some showers increasing. It's getting to 14. Only a possible shower for Melbourne. There are a few drops already this morning. 17 will be the top. 16 with a dry day for Hobart. Adelaide, morning fog. There's a road weather alert for you, so take care on the roads and don't forget that umbrella. Some showers on the way. 17 will be the top. 21 for Perth with a clear day, and up north Darwin staying fine too. 32 the maximum there. Now we've got this widespread wet and stormy weather moving right through central and eastern New South Wales, southern Queensland as well. We're looking at some totals potentially 10 to 20 millimetres. Lots of storms around teams, so I'll keep an eye on that for you right through the morning.
Got a date with a lemur dance next hour, Nate. I'll keep you to that. Good morning to you. Good morning, Lisa. Great to see you back. We have the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, coming up in less than an hour's time. Lots to talk to him about, but also got an interesting book that's bringing...
Oh, you love this book. Michael loves this book. Michael loves this book. Why Firstborns Rule the World. And guess where Michael came in his family? Yes, of course, firstborn. But it's really fascinating, actually, because, well, family dynamics have changed as the size of family changes. So all those rules about where you think if you're a middle child or the youngest, what it means. I love this comment from Catherine, just quickly. Try being the middle child of 7 girls. Downside, I couldn't change the world or rule it.
Anyway, I'd love to get your comments on how the birth order dynamics work in your family. Just a quick programming note. Tomorrow for the first hour of the show from 6 till 7 on ABC TV, the main channel, you won't see News Breakfast. You'll see the very important Australia versus Kuwait World Cup soccer qualifier, but News Breakfast will be on as usual from 6 on the news channel and back on the main channel from 7. So don't forget. Let's go back to that breaking news from Israel now, where opposition parties have reached a deal to form government and oust Benjamin Netanyahu. Our correspondent Nick Dole has the latest on this breaking story. Nick, good morning. Take us through it.
Good morning, Michael. Well, there have been 4 elections in the last 2 years here in Israel, and to try to avoid yet another election, the opposition leader here, Yair Lapid, had until 11:59. That was the deadline he had to inform the president that he had formed a coalition to govern Israel. He's just made that deadline. And so Yair Lapid, he's a moderate, considered more moderate in Israeli politics. He's popular with particularly middle-class secular Israelis, but he's formed quite an unlikely coalition, really, because he's relying on the support of a man named Naftali Bennett. Mr. Bennett, he's an ultra-nationalist. He says he's right-wing and proud of it. He's previously spoken of his wishes to annex Palestinian territories, and so he will be crucial to this coalition. But also forming this coalition will be left-wing politicians and even Arab politicians as well. So it is quite an unlikely and potentially quite an unruly coalition, but they have been united in their desire to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. And so this is now a matter for the parliament, but certainly it does appear that Israel is heading for a new government.
Gee, Benjamin Netanyahu, Nick, has been a fixture on and off on Israel's political scene for decades now. So what does this mean for his political future?
Yeah, you're right. Benjamin Netanyahu has been a major force in Israeli politics. He's the longest-serving Israeli Prime Minister, and he was also the youngest ever Israeli Prime Minister. This is not the end for him, at least not by his reckoning. He has spent the last few days desperately trying to scupper any plans to build this coalition. We still haven't heard from him, but we're likely to hear more fighting words because we're expecting it may take over a week for this vote to essentially take place in the Knesset, in the parliament here. And that will give Benjamin Netanyahu more time to try to build support and try to change people's minds. Whether he can do that, we don't really know. But we've previously heard him appealing to people and using the recent conflict with Hamas in Gaza as a reason to support him. He has said that this sort of coalition will look bad for Israel, that Iran will think Israel is weak, that Hamas will think that Israel is weak. And so he's really appealing to right-wing politicians, hoping to change their minds. He may have over a week to do so, and I think most people here say that he's not someone who can be discounted just yet.
Nick Dole in Jerusalem, thanks for the latest there.
Back to our coverage of the COVID outbreak, and the federal government isn't ruling out support for Victoria in light of the state's extended lockdown. Our political reporter Stephanie Boris joins us from Parliament House. Good morning, Steph. Well, the Victorian government is asking for this support for workers and businesses. What are they actually looking for?
Good morning, Lisa. Well, now that Victoria is going into a second week of lockdown, the Victorian government has again asked the federal government for financial assistance. So as you mentioned there, it is specifically for businesses that have had to close their doors and for workers that can no longer go to work because of these health restrictions. And they're proposing that JobKeeper be brought back. So the JobKeeper wage subsidy was introduced in March of last year, and what it did, it provided money to businesses, and that money then had to be passed on to staff to pay their wages. So it meant that businesses didn't have the pressure of finding that money to pay wages, but at the same time, staff that weren't actually working was still getting an income. That ended at the end of March, so the Victorian government is suggesting that be brought back in. So far, what's been announced at a state level is about $450 million worth of support for businesses, but that comes from the Victorian government, and essentially there's that admission there from the Victorian government that that isn't enough, hence that they've asked the Commonwealth for further support. So we do know last night both treasurers at a state and federal level had a conversation, as did the acting Victorian Premier James Merlino. He spoke with the Prime Minister Scott Morrison. Yeah,
and there's a few ideas kicking around actually, Steph. ACOS had suggested a $3,000 disaster recovery payment. Reports this morning that perhaps that's what the federal government could be considering, some kind of one-off payment under that scheme. What have you heard?
So the Treasurer Josh Frydenberg is doing the media rounds this morning, and I know he'll be on News Breakfast just after 8 o'clock. We have heard this morning that idea you just mentioned there about the emergency payment, a one-off payment given to workers. That proposal was put to Josh Frydenberg on air a short time ago. He said that that is one of the ideas that has been put forward. That's one of the elements that's part of this discussion, but he wouldn't confirm whether in fact that is something they are or aren't doing. One of the other ideas being thrown around is if the federal government does give money, the state has to actually match it as well. So it's a combined effort in terms of financial support. But that idea of bringing the JobKeeper wage subsidy back, well, that doesn't appear to be a possibility. The Treasurer Josh Frydenberg says that it was the right call to end that in March, and now it's about finding measures that really reflect the moment that we're in at the moment when it comes to the pandemic.
What we need to think about, obviously, given the pandemic is still with us, is how we approach this on a national basis. It's not about Victoria, West Australia, individual cases. It's about on a national basis. And we will stick to our principles, namely our approaches will continue to be national, sustainable. Where support is offered, it's through existing systems.
Now, the federal government has been very clear and keen to point out that it's the state governments that introduce restrictions. It's not the federal government pushing for it. And the ABC understands that the federal government, only wants to put in the amount of support that's needed out of fear that this could almost provide some sort of incentive for state governments to go quicker and faster on lockdowns further into this year if they know that federal government funding is available. So what we'll hear today, most likely, is a formal announcement from the federal government about some sort of package. Those keywords, Lisa, that we've heard many times before are being used once again: targeted, measured and proportional. So some sort of package that not only will be able to be used in Victoria for what we're seeing happening there now, but if there are to be further long lockdowns in different states later this year, the same measures could be applied.
Let's hope we don't see that though. Steph Boris, thank you.
OK, let's go to Jervis Bay on the New South Wales south coast now, which is at the centre of a COVID alert too, along with Goulburn and Gundagai. After that Melbourne family visited there, the family later tested positive. Reporter Jessica Clifford joins us now from a testing clinic at Jervis Bay. Jessica, good morning. How long were the queues yesterday for people waiting to get tested?
Good morning, Michael. Yes, yesterday we saw absolutely enormous queues here at Huskisson in Jervis Bay. There was cars lining up down the streets. There was cars covering the oval with many people wanting to get tested after that news of a positive case coming through the region. In fact, New South Wales Health was so concerned that they set up another couple of clinics. So there's also a testing clinic in Nowra, and lines were just as long at that clinic as well, and another clinic just a few minutes away from here to try and deal with the incredible demand for testing. And in fact, the local member yesterday praised the community, saying she was very happy that the community had turned out in such large force. And I think we can really expect the same today, particularly with the news overnight that there've been further locations added to the health alert. We know there's been further locations here in Huskisson, and the times for Butteree have also been extended as well. And in fact, we're about 40 minutes away from the clinic opening, and already there's cars starting to line up waiting to be tested. So obviously a huge response from the community, which is good, but an anxious wait for everybody, I think.
Anxious wait indeed. What's the general feeling there, Jessica, amongst residents now that COVID, or the possibility of COVID, has reached their community?
Look, residents are nervous. They're feeling anxious. Obviously, it's been quite a long time since this positive case visited our region, almost 2 weeks, in fact. And so if there was to be any community transmission, it's been there for a while, and people are really nervous about this. It's not actually the first time this has happened in Jervis Bay either. We saw last year when the North Sydney outbreak happened, another positive case came through, and it was a similar sort of response. So they know what can happen, and they are really worried about it. Of course, one of the areas of concern was a campground in Butteree National Park as well, and this is an area that's run and managed by the Aboriginal community at Wreck Bay, and there's a lot of concern for that community as well, because Wreck Bay is a vulnerable community, and Butteree have actually closed the park. The park rangers have closed the park until at least the weekend, until we can get a gauge on what the situation might be here at that point. We haven't had any positive cases so far, but certainly it's a very anxious wait. And I can see here this morning, residents talking with each other. They're a little bit nervous, Michael.
Understandably so. Jessica Clifford, really appreciate the update. Thank you so much. Let's go to sports news now, and an interview I've been looking forward to all morning. Tony, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. A Melbourne teenager who missed out on selection last year has become the #1 pick in this year's AFL mid-season rookie draft. It's a welcome move for Mentone Grammar Year 12 student Jacob Edwards, currently one of many who have been studying while in lockdown, and he joins us now. Good morning to you, Jacob. Congratulations on last night, and they've got the kid out to you pretty fast, haven't they?
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for having me here.
No, mate, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. How are you feeling? Of course, the Jungle Drums were banging about you going #1 for quite some time, but then for it to eventually happen, it must have been a bit of a